To soy or not to soy? That is the question. In this video, I'd like to address the concern that many people have about soy foods. There seems to be a lot of confusion centered around whether eating soy is good or bad. My name is Rizwan Bukhari. I'm a vascular surgeon from the Dallas area. I adhere to a whole food plant-based lifestyle, and I teach whole food plant-based nutrition to my patients as a part of their lifestyle modification program, both to prevent and reverse disease. What I would like to convey today is that not only is it highly likely that soy is not harmful, but that also consuming soy on a regular basis is likely highly beneficial for both women and men at all stages of life. These concerns and confusion are centered around the fact that estrogen consumption can be bad. It is known that exposure to estrogen does increase the risk for breast cancer and breast cancer reoccurrence. In addition, there are concerns that early puberty or menarche is related to estrogen exposure. And then there are also concerns about infertility related to estrogen exposure. And in men, there are concerns about feminization and development of breast tissue. So where does this concern come from? Well, soy products are known to have isoflavones in them. Isoflavones are phytonutrients, and in particular, the ones that are concerning to people in soy foods are isoflavones known as phytoestrogens. That term phytoestrogen is where a lot of this confusion comes from. Phytoestrogen means plant estrogen. So this is where the confusion sets in. As the name might imply, the term estrogen makes people think that eating soy foods is going to increase one's exposure to estrogen. In the past, the general dogma and even the pseudoscientific assumption was that exposure to plant estrogens or phytoestrogens was the same as exposure to mammalian estrogens. And therefore, people would experience the same poor or bad outcomes that high exposure to estrogens would give you. As I mentioned, increased breast cancer and breast cancer recurrence, decreased fertility, early age of menarche, and in men, feminization. So what I'm going to say to you today is that this is just flat out not the truth. The reality is that these classes of phytoestrogens have estrogen-like compounds because they share similar molecular structures, but in reality they do not have estrogen-like effects on the body. In fact, they have relative anti-estrogenic effects. In our bodies, we have both alpha and beta estrogen receptors on our cells. These receptors are like keys. If the estrogen binds to an alpha receptor, it turns the key and turns on the alpha effects. If it binds to the beta receptor, it turns the beta key and turns on beta effects. And it just so turns out that the alpha receptors increase estrogen-like effects and the beta receptors decrease estrogen-like effects. And now this is an extremely important point. Phytoestrogens, or plant estrogens, which come from soy foods and many other plant foods as well, have 1,000-fold higher affinity for the beta receptor than for the alpha receptor. This basically means that phytoestrogens are binding the estrogen receptor that turns off and has negative estrogen effects. So let's talk about the science just a little bit. There have been over 40,000 articles that have been published studying soy and soy products. And the preponderance of the evidence shows no ill effects of consuming and ingesting soy in regular amounts. In population studies and epidemiologic studies that look at Asian and Southeast Asian countries which have a high intake of soy food, there is not only no increased incidence of breast cancers, but there appears to be a decreased incidence of breast cancer. And in fact, when these countries have become more westernized in their diet with decreased intake of soy foods, there has been some association with increased incidences of breast cancer. Increased soy consumption has been shown not only to prevent breast cancer, but in women who have breast cancer or have had breast cancer in the past, it seems to decrease the reoccurrence of cancer and decrease the mortality associated with breast cancer. Interestingly enough, the American Institute for Cancer Research and the American Cancer Association have now come out with position statements saying that it's okay for women with breast cancer to consume soy foods. There is even some data that shows that when young women in puberty and in adolescence take in 2 servings of soy a day, it appears to be highly protective and decrease the incidence of breast cancer throughout their lifetime. And finally, what about those man boobs? Well, not to worry. Clinical studies show that increased soy intake in men does not have any feminizing effects, even up to 6 servings a day. And there are also studies that show that increased soy intake in men is associated with decreased prostate cancer incidence. Clearly, men in those Asian and Southeast Asian countries who have been eating soy for generations will be glad to hear of this recent news that they will be okay. So do not fear. Soy is not bad. At the very least, it is not harmful, and the data seems to show that it is actually beneficial for men and women and children at all stages of life. So what can you take away from this? I recommend that people take in 2 to 3 servings of whole soy products on a daily basis. These whole soy products include edamame, miso, natto, and tempeh. You can also get your soy from minimally processed foods such as tofu and soy milk. Just make sure the soy milk is coming from whole soybeans and not from protein or isolate. Well, I hope this has helped clear up your confusion about soy products. If you'd like to learn more about a whole food plant-based lifestyle, I would encourage you to go to my website, plantbaseddfw.com. We have many resources there to help you get information and to get started. Take care.